All right, good morning, everyone. I apologize, we're starting just a few minutes late. We had some technical difficulties. Today is Friday, August 4th. It's a little after 9 o'clock. This is the Affordable Housing Growth and Development Trust Fund Board meeting. Pursuant to the passage of legislation extending COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, this meeting is closed to the public. However, alternative public access was provided via the posting. At this time, please note that in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, I must inquire whether anyone is taping this meeting and to please let their presence known. Seeing none, I will have a call to order. Mark Milne.
Present.
Laura Schufelt.
Present.
Wendy Northcross.
Present.
Wendy is sitting with Jillian, and Andy Clyburn is present. Mark Ells is not with us today, so I'll chair this morning's meeting. Now that we've got the call to order, public comment. Do we have any members of the public with us this morning that wish to provide comment? Seeing none, we'll jump into the topics for discussion. The first item on today's agenda is the approval of minutes from the July 7th trust meeting. I know they were sent out to everyone. Thanks again, Ellen. Do we have any discussion? Do I have a motion to approve as written?
I'll move approval.
Second.
All right, I have a first and a second. Roll call vote. Laura Schufelt.
Abstain.
Mark Milne.
Yes.
Wendy Northcross.
Yes.
Andy Clyburn, yes. All right. Next item on our agenda, we have a new application. $500,000 of redevelopment funding to Jake Dewey for Linnell Landing to renovate an existing 3-family 1870 building on 0.39 acre parcel and add 3 new buildings with 8 new 1-bedroom and 4 new 2-bedroom units, including 1 inclusion area at 65% AMI and 1 affordable at 80% AMI. I believe we have Mr. Dewey with us today. Hi, Jake.
Hi, Andy. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please go ahead. Jill, I was just going to ask Jillian. Jillian, do you want to say anything, or do you just want Jake to jump right into it?
Well, I was just going to, yes, invite him to present. Hopefully everybody received in the packet. There was, I think the only thing that I would say is that if you're having difficulty seeing the pro forma, I do have hard copies that I can distribute to those that are here, but it is difficult to see. And that's all. I'll just let Jake take it away then.
Yeah, I'll just describe the project a little bit. So it's sort of across from 200 Main, the Steamship Authority lot, in our new downtown zoning district. It's an existing 1870s.
Jake, we can't hear you.
Murphy's Law today. IT is not with us. Jake, you're completely frozen. Perhaps if you turn your video off, you'll maybe the audio will come through. I think we're trending towards in-person meetings.
I can't find a chat feature. He probably can't hear us.
There's no chat.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not on these, no.
Looks like he's logging out and trying to log back in.
Okay.
Does anybody want me to run upstairs and give you the pro forma?
Hard copy, anybody?
I know the way.
Wendy, you're not to leave that office until this meeting's adjourned.
Yes, sir.
Tempting.
We'll give Jake about 2 minutes, and if we don't get him back, we'll jump on to the trust administrator update. We can circle back to him.
just present it.
I mean, if he could present, could we make it?
You could, if you have sufficient. Right.
Okay, let's move along. Item number 3 on today's agenda, the trust administrators update / follow-ups from Jillian Douglas. Jillian, please.
Well, I just included in the packet the spreadsheet for the balances. I think I had originally sent that out incorrect, but these are the balances that you have in your packet as of July or June 30th, 2023. And then there was the memo that that I had produced. It's a draft at this point because typically those have been coming directly from Mark, signed by him. And unfortunately, he hasn't had, I don't think he's had a chance to even look at that. So I wanted you all to, if there's any comments or tone or anything about that report, that you have any comments or changes, and please make me aware. And then I think I probably would convey it to the CPC because we're a little behind. So I would probably convey that with the comment that if Mark had any changes, we would follow up with an addendum or something.
Thanks for that. So if anyone has any comments, please get them to Jillian and we'll get that for Mark's signature early next week.
Looks like we're getting Jake, maybe.
Sorry, I don't know what happened. My internet just totally died.
Jake, I'm sorry, we had to move on, pal. Oh,
You gotta
was
pay
he
your
frozen
bill.
again. I think I just froze him. I apologize for my Midwest humor. Jake, are you with us?
I'm here. If you can hear me,
Okay.
I'm here.
All right, let's go back to Jake, please.
All right. So I don't know where I cut off. I think I was talking to myself for a few minutes.
Yeah, you cut off at the very beginning.
Okay. So the subject properties at 50 Yarmouth Road, which is very close to the 200 Main Street Town Hall, that sort of east end of Main Street, Hyannis. Existing structures at 1870s built sort of sea captain style home. It was someone, Mr. Linnell, who worked on the town wharfs, is where the name was sort of originated from. And the proposed plan is to maintain the existing structure, which is 3 residential units. There's 2 2-bedrooms in there and 2 1-bedroom units that were a conversion at some point, probably back in the 60s or something. And then to improve that building and then to build on the rear of the lot with 3 new structures. 2 would be duplexes, similar to the ones that I built on Pearl Street. Bath each side. And then a large 8-plex, 8 1-bedroom units. 2 of them we're going to make handicap accessible. I house a lot of veterans, and so it seems necessary to have the 2 1-bedroom set up that way. That building will have laundry in the basement. The duplexes will have laundry in the units and be sort of self-contained. Again, it's a really tight lot. We're sort of building it out to the maximum of our new downtown zoning. There'll be 1 parking space per unit and 1 additional there. And so it is sort of a full build out you'll see on the plan. It'll be on municipal sewer, town water, and does meet all those requirements. We've been to informal site plan review and got positive feedback. We're working on things like drainage and different sort of infrastructure connection pieces and getting that data for the different departments. But we did have positive feedback there. And now the biggest component here is figuring out how to fund the thing. As you guys know, construction costs have gotten high and interest rates have gotten really high. And so that's where the request came for the 500,000 is to be able to sort of make the numbers work. Right now, there's no HTIP funding. It is in the zone where we could get HTIP funding. Potentially that could come back. I could wait and see if that comes about, but been trying to make it work to potentially have shovels in the ground this fall and have occupancy by spring. So that's sort of the main gist of the project. I don't know if there's specific questions or things you guys want me to touch on, but happy to answer any questions.
Thanks for that overview, Jake. Do we have discussion from members? Laura?
Jake, can you, I know you gave us a comparison to 850, which doesn't really compare because they're units that are at 50% AMI. And at the time, we increased our funding to 100, or the board decided to increase the funding to 140%, 140,000 per unit because of the lower AMI targeting. You have two affordable units at 65 and 80, and you're asking for 250,000 each. Just, you know, we can only fund affordable units. We can't look at the project as a whole and say, this is what your gap is, so we need to fill it. So I guess walk me through how this isn't precedent setting when we said that the 140 wasn't going to be precedent setting.
I mean, I think we just have to look at the cost to create units of housing. I understand that from a justifying perspective, you have to be tying it to affordable units, but we are creating, you know, 15 housing units, 12 new housing units. So I think we can spread that. But I think the biggest difference in this environment now is the interest rates. You know, the rates are so high. I mean, this property alone as a 3-family at the purchase price, which I disclosed there, doesn't even work. You know, the bank won't even fund that as just a straight 3-unit rental with the current interest rates. A year ago, it would have been fine, but it doesn't work. So overall, I think, you know, we have to get serious if we're going to look at how we support housing. Again, I don't want to set precedent, but I think this is realistic in the price point we are to create affordable units. I don't know how much activity you've gotten at the $100,000, you know, NOFA, but I think, you know, the pro forma is very tight. I'm putting a lot of my own skin in the game here on this, you know, and I'm open to other subsidy directions and exploring those, but to move quickly, and I know that's the intent of the trust, is to be able to create things on a relatively quick basis. You know, this is where the numbers really sort of crunch.
I'm sorry, Paula, are you speaking? I think that was an inadvertent comment from Paula there. Laura, please follow up.
So I haven't checked what got passed in the budget, but there was $57 million for HDIP that was supposed to come through in the budget, which
The
is
state budget.
state funded HDIP. So, and both at least both the House and the governor said they were going to approve that. That's it has been 10 million a year, so 57 million for the first year, and then 30 million going forward after that. I don't particularly like HDIP for Barnstable, but that was supposed to be in the budget, and I haven't again, I haven't looked to see whether it actually got through and was signed or was in the final package, but it was there.
Yeah, I've been trying to follow it as much as I can too, because it's really important for these projects, but it doesn't look like it's been fully approved or funded yet. But, you know, that's an option. You know, if you guys decide not to move on this, you know, that may be the scenarios. I just have to wait and see if that happens or doesn't happen.
They may be waiting for the bond bill, which will be the fall.
Wendy, please.
So Jake, if you did get the HDIP, how would that impact your ask to us?
It probably could reduce it depending upon, you know, that's becoming a more competitive program. So it's a matter of if it's going to get selected or not. I don't think there's any risk of Barnstable not being a gateway city going forward. So we do qualify on that front. And in the past, because there haven't been many HDIPs here, they've been supportive of trying to put us in. And my projects are relatively small. compared to some of the things that they're seeing. So they have been supportive. So I think, you know, it probably would work together with the funds. I just assume it's probably going to put the project off 18 months, if not 2 years.
How
So
much would it reduce the ask to us by?
So they would give up to 15% of the qualifying expenses, basically, and they're tax credits. So they're issuing a tax credit that then I can sell, usually at between 85 to 90 cents on the dollar. So that's how it would calculate out. And then if I'm to do that, I have to make sure at least 80% of my units are market rate, because that's a market rate subsidy. So it's not subsidizing the affordable units, that's subsidizing the market rate units. As
So
of now, Laura, you may know more if they're going to modify that, but that's how it's been written existing.
That's how I think there's some suggestions that there would have to, right now, there doesn't have to be any affordable units in an HDIP project. And only 2% of the projects have affordable units. Of course, with our inclusionary, that shouldn't, you know, we should still have affordable units in there. But I think that's, you know, one of the changes that's been asked for from a lot of the gateway cities as well, because they're just getting gentrified. So,
Wendy, please.
So through you, Mr. Chair, to, I guess, the committee and to Jake, if we were to authorize this amount to you and then you were to get the HDIP, is it possible, would you refund or replenish our fund for other projects?
So can I answer, AD?
Yes, please.
So one of the things with HDIP is they will not award the funds after you've begun construction. So it has to be approved and authorized in advance. So again, like, you know, I'm one who likes to move on this stuff quickly. We need these housing now. You know, I don't like to talk about it for
Yeah, I'm with you
2
on
years.
that.
I would rather get this thing going, as our
Yeah.
building commissioner and other people that have been working with my plans on the other side of this are realize, you know, we're kind of in go mode. So I would prefer not to wait. You know, we did with my high school road project, that was an HDIP, and we were literally like, you know, it was like every day calling the state being like, come on, come on, come on. We want to, you know, get shovels in the ground. And I don't really want to be in that situation with this unless it's looking really positive that HDIP is right around the corner. That being said, if it did work out and it came together, then yeah, I could take potentially less funds. Everything too right now is tied to these interest rates, which are changing on a literally daily basis in the upward direction for the most part, which is
Jake, are you shovel ready?
pretty much. We've got bids. You know, we're going back with our update on Tuesday to back to informal site plan review. Planning has said we don't need to go to formal site plan review. So we don't have to go through that discretionary process. So right now, most of the details are things with, you know, DPW on drainage calculations and those, you know, how much the drainage pits are and that kind of stuff. But otherwise we're very close. Yeah. I mean, I would love to be in the ground by October. You know, it's been put on to me to figure out the financing component now. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm pushing all of our local lenders right now because the rates are just so high, to find out who wants to be the most competitive, who wants to be part of the project.
Mark?
Yes, good morning, Jake. Thank you for coming. Couple questions. You would also, I think I also saw the potential or the anticipated request for a tie to go along with this property. Do you have a sense as to what you're asking for in that area so we can kind of quantify what the total request is?
So the ask was for the first 10 years for the property taxes to be abated at the current, you know, stay at the same rate that they are, which with the fire and CPA and everything is about, I think it's about 3,700. And then they would adjust from there to 80%. And then at the end of the 20 years go to full. Again, like the numbers are just so tight that it's trying to find anything that's available. And I know that there obviously are added costs to the town for new units, but it's not reducing the tax roll when we issue the tie agreements. So I think it's a strong tool to let these properties stabilize a little bit, because as you'll see on the pro forma, it doesn't stabilize that quickly. It's expensive to do this stuff. It's
Yeah, I
scary,
mean,
honestly.
The utility betterment you have included in the budget is planned as a result of our new sewer assessment ordinance and the intensity of use on this property. Is that why you included that?
No, that's water fees.
Oh, those are water fees. Okay.
Yes. I don't anticipate, because that's already connected to municipal sewer, I don't expect more than, a connection charge. Usually Griffin charges, something in the $1,000 to $2,000 range. Because there's capacity there. There's no like pump station adjustment or anything like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Wendy?
So I want to hear from Jake about the improvement overall to the neighborhood. How do you perceive this impacting your abutters?
So there's a couple projects planned in that part of town. So I'm hoping it sort of works with that. Corner Yarmouth Road and Crocker, there's a planned improvement there that's permitted. And then obviously the Cascade. You guys probably know more of what's going to happen to 200 Main Street, but I'm hopeful that will also, this will all sort of bring that east end of Main Street back to life. It's close to transit, it's close to Main Street. It kind of has everything going on right there. There are some dilapidated buildings nearby for sure. And there's a decent amount of multifamily housing nearby. So I'm hopeful that this will sort of improve that. The existing structure on this property is, it's cute and has historic character, but it has deferred maintenance for sure. So I think, again, this sort of copies the high school road model where you have a historic building that keeps your street frontage the same. So the drive-by, you won't really notice the infill in the back. So that's why I sort of like these kind of projects. It won't change a lot from the streetscape, and hopefully it'll add, nice housing units close to Main Street and downtown.
Thanks, Jake. We have other questions? Laura?
This is just a comment. We also have had, the board has had a policy that we wouldn't fund inclusionary units because they're supposed to be, included in the for the relief that they're getting on the development side, that they're included. So I just wanted to say that has been a policy.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Laura. Clearly, there's a lot going on here, Jake. We're thrilled that you're bringing a project forward. But it is precedent setting. We went through as you probably witnessed, a lot of discussion just to get off top center of a $65,000 per unit up to 100. And when we talk about going up to $250,000 per unit, it just do the quick math on that. We're talking about 10 units for our entire budget. Not saying that maybe that isn't the way we have to go, because we want to get them done, but it's certainly a lot of discussion, and Laura's points are all very well founded, and we're going to have further discussion on it. Did you by any chance look at the potential for more? I mean, we are handcuffed to funding affordable units, and obviously by only having 2, that drives that per unit up. Was there any thought given to more affordable units to make this work better for the trust funding?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to discussion and sort of, counteroffer, if you want to call it that, of different ways of doing it. And I know your funds are coming from CPA funds, so we can go up to 100%. I think we go up to 110% of AMI, right?
No, 100.
No, it's 100.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's that option. I mean, the hardest part with the deed restricted units is the cost of the time of vacancy because it takes time to fill them. They're always the last units to be filled, and you never get that time back. When it takes you 3 or 4 months to refill a unit, you never get that back. That just ruins your numbers for the entire year. So that's the hard and the scary part of it. And then the other thing is I potentially lose the HDIP or the tie option. So we have to flip that because I have to have at least 80% market in there for that program. So potentially I lose that. So then we have to make up for that, which is an annual nut that has to be added back in. But again, I'm open to discussion on it and looking at it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, clearly more discussion needs to be had. I rewind to a few years ago where we were told, $65,000 per unit, and they're coming in like water. And clearly that has not been what we've seen through our current NOFA. Charlie, please.
We've been looking at this in side conversations, if you will, with Jillian and myself and with others, and having done a lot of this work when I was with Hetch and having looked at the prices and the financing and et cetera, I'm convinced that the best role that one of the best roles that the trust could play is to seriously consider buying into these units and acquiring them as part of our inventory, and then working on the management side for it. I don't know how else these numbers are going to come together, quite frankly. It begs the question about what a fair price is for these units, given the restrictions that necessarily accompany them on cash flow. But I just, if there's some way of certainly our borrowing rate, I don't think we have to spend all of our resources on a capital outlay, that we have the power to borrow and at a whole lot more competitive rate than that, and just run those numbers. So I just like to, I think Jake's conundrum is I think why exactly we're seeing so little activity out there. It just isn't doable. And unless we start taking an ownership interest, there may be other answers. I don't pretend to have the broad picture that Laura does, but it seems to me we ought to put that on the table and have Jake consider it as well. We certainly have the power within the trust to borrow money, and we certainly have the trust opportunity to have ownership interest, and that may be the way that some of these projects are going to go forward in the future, particularly the small ones.
Thank you, Charlie. David Anthony, please.
Good morning, Jake. I just had a question from a developer's standpoint. Cape Light Compact does a lot of packaging of programs to try to put in heat pumps. There's some incentives now for some changes in technology in what you could potentially use. I know that there's been a couple of programs where they've tried to do, especially for environmental justice communities. There are things that might help. From a developer's perspective, have you worked with the Cape Light Compact on this particular project, and is there some value to that, or have you found that that really doesn't move the needle one way or the other for you, or in fact does that adopting new technology actually complicate things to the point where it's not applicable? Because if you're looking for every possible solution, and there's a way the Cape Light Compact can help out with some of the mechanicals, the heating, the HVAC, battery backups, things like that, that might be helpful. Do you explore that as well, or is that something that you do down the road?
Yeah, so they do offer like some rebates, but they do not have a lot of programs for new construction. There's some help, but I will say they're doing some amazing stuff on existing affordable units that I have right now. Literally, like, we're getting people off oil and onto heat pumps for zero cost to me or the tenant. So there's incredible stuff for existing units that are not operating efficiently. But energy codes requiring us to do what it's requiring us to do on these new units. So you're kind of following that and you're getting some rebate, but there's no windfall there or huge contribution from them at this point.
So if I could just follow up quickly, we are developing the Cape Light Compact Governing Board, which I've sat on since 2006. We're developing our new three-year plan that we're going to be submitting to DPU on how to spend energy efficiency. And I think that the idea of the Cape Light Compact supporting affordable housing in some way is an area that maybe we're missing. And it could be that there's a disconnect between people such as yourself and the Cape Light Compact and putting in programs that would really encourage that or make that margin that you have to deal with a little bit better. So perhaps we can connect some people together and talk about that as we develop our next three-year plan, which we're, I think, going to be submitting by the end of this year for review for DPU. So would you be open to having a conversation?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, all this, the heat pump technology is evolved so much now that can be your main heating and cooling system for all these properties now. I think seems like that's the goal, is that we're going pretty much all electric nowadays, so we can control where the energy is being produced.
Now, do you build or plan for solar on the roof in any way?
Yes, so we did, and we carried funds in here to put solar on the larger building, on the roof there. The smaller buildings, from what we've looked at preliminary, it doesn't make sense because of the way they're facing.
Yep.
But one array on the large building seems like it made the most sense there.
Excellent, thank you.
Laura,
Just to continue that, I didn't see in the pro forma any rebates for the solar. Were
I
you
don't
anticipating?
anticipate we'll get rebates. I mean, they're depreciable, but I've never gotten rebates for solar.
There's federal rebates for solar.
Tax credits on personal income.
Tax credits on personal or company income, yes.
Yeah, but they're not sellable. I can't sell them. So I have to have that income to offset, or the
So the developers I work with get federal rebates.
do they monetize? Are they able to monetize them and sell them to other people?
They are in a revenue
cash?
to their pro forma. I can find out the
Okay.
the
Because for me, I would
particulars.
have to have someone that would buy them, like the HTIP tax credits, to monetize them, to actually have it add funds to the.
Well, this is
project.
nonprofits too that do it, so I'll find the particulars and get them to you.
Wendy,
So Jake, what's your timeline? I mean, if you heard yes today, and you said you're shovel ready, when are these units available? I mean, best guess.
So, and Jillian did ask about the purchase and sale. So we've been kicking the can on it a little bit. The plan is, if we sort of have these numbers together to make this all jive, I would take ownership of the property next Friday. And then we would, again, assuming we get the sign-offs from the building commissioner and the different departments here, and then the bank does their piece of it, we would potentially be, I think by the end of, building department gets 30 days on the building permit. So realistically, probably end of September, early weeks in October, we would be, digging and clearing. And then that would put us probably in May or June, depending upon what the weather's like this winter, for people to move in. Be the goal. Obviously, the affordable units always take a little bit longer, so it might be July or August before the affordable units would be occupied.
Laura, please.
Just on that point, Jake, have you looked at the Housing Navigator
No.
website?
No.
It's a new tool that all subsidized. The goal is to get all subsidized units on the Housing Navigator for prospective tenants to be able to find housing. And it's a great tool for leasing up, but also for they list all lotteries and first come, first serve. And so all the housing search folks are using it, and it's all our projects have to use it. It's a nonprofit. It's Housing Navigator MA. So take a look at it. It costs, but I think it costs a lot less than having empty units.
So the landlord pays to post in there, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. But they're not running the lottery there. You're still running the lottery.
You still have to run a lottery, right? They just advertise it and, you know. Hopefully it will take the place of those newspaper ads that have to go in that nobody reads.
Is there a way to jumpstart the lottery process, but before there's a shovel in the ground?
So the lottery process, there has to be 60 days of advertising before the lottery. And then once folks are chosen, they have to be, once they're awarded a unit, they have to have 30 days to lease up so they can give notice where they are. So it works best if it starts, 6 months before occupancy. And, we saw, I won't get on my soapbox and change the subject, but we saw where it didn't work. But that's how it works best. If it's 6 months before, if you have a 1 year construction and you start 50% construction, that's when it works best. And that's when everyone gets in. A lot of times in those cases, the affordable units are the first to be occupied instead of the last.
Laura, do you
Chair,
run the risk if that happens and then your construction's delayed or your CO's delayed, or historically it's been our utility company that is delaying us on getting our final CO? What do you get stuck putting people in a hotel then if you're delayed, or?
No, what usually happens is that folks just extend their current month to month, whatever they're doing. It's not great for landlords, but usually soon enough, so you can let folks know before they have to give 30 days notice.
Charlie?
We ran into that exact type of delay with the Main Street Katuitt project that Bornstein did in terms of completions, and it dragged on, and it was a real problem for the tenants that were jammed getting out of their units, or needing to get out of their units, or not having a unit, and then waiting for an occupancy certificate. So it's an issue.
Wendy?
I'd like to fund this. I mean, Jake's a known quantity. This is an area that we've purposefully zoned for this kind of improvement to our community. The need is like, I sat with a person on Monday at the One Cape Summit who told me they had to not open their restaurant this year, multi-generational restaurant, turned into a retail establishment for the summer because they didn't have enough staff to open their restaurant after over 50 years. I mean, I think this goes without saying the need, but I'm just frustrated that we have resources that, unless, and I'm willing to have people argue with me, but we're sitting on resources that can be deployed. I think we need to deploy them. So I'd like to speak in favor of this process and not dragging out the decision-making
Thank you for that.
timeline.
Any other comment? Mark, please.
Yes, again, could you, how long, if you were to apply for the HDIP, how much of a delay would that add to this project?
Hey, Laura, I think, right, it probably is gonna be fall that it would get authorized. And then it's not open, as the last ones that I've done, it was open rounds or whatever, and now I believe they're doing set dates or whatever. So I would assume it's gonna add a year, would be my guess.
Elizabeth, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to clarify, I found an update that came out on Tuesday from the Mass Inc. team, who has been supporting reauthorization of the HDIP through the legislature. It confirms that HDIP was not part of the budget. It was not part of the tax reform package, and there was no FY23 supplemental budget. So there will be no HDIP authorization until obviously the legislature comes back in session, or they won't even have an opportunity to talk about it until after Labor Day.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mark, did you have another question?
I was just curious, I don't know who to direct this to, but does this board, we have the authority to subsidize rents, for example, to get more affordable units out of this project? Could we provide a subsidy on the rents?
Laura, I saw you shaking your head yes.
We can do that. It's whether it, we obviously would have to have it time restricted. Or, for example, if we project based, so we put a subsidy into a unit, no matter who the tenant would have to meet, qualifications. But typically, we don't have an unlimited source of funds, so we couldn't project based. We could provide rent assistance to tenants, is probably the better way to do it. And I do have a comment.
Laura?
Yeah, I mean, my comment is just, I understand the finances. I understand that this is a tight project, especially in this environment of rising interest rates. We talked about a while back, the 1+ mortgage that has interest rate reductions. And, I wish there was a program that we could do that, because it's a better use of our funds to reduce the interest rate. It doesn't take up as much funds. But again, we can only subsidize the 2 units that are at 80%, and policy-wise, we wouldn't be able to do the one that's not an inclusionary, the 80% unit. So then we're putting $500,000 into an 80% unit, which isn't that much lower than the rents that are being prescribed. Yes, there's more hoops to jump through, but it's not that much lower, except obviously anyone can rent the market. So I'm having a hard time, getting to yes on this. The next time Jake comes in, or any developer comes in, is it whatever their gap is? We have, I don't know, $2.6 million or something. If we spent $250,000 on every unit, we'd have 10 units. Is that good enough? I don't know. Just with this, anyway, we said the 140 wasn't going to be a precedent. Obviously, it's not. It was a floor, and I just can't see this being a good financial decision.
Thanks for that, Laura. Yeah, it's a quandary, and I appreciate those points, certainly. That's why I ask about the number of affordables. And when you do, I won't say spin it, but when you really look at it and articulate that, you're absolutely right. We're talking about $500,000 for a unit. But on the flip side, you're talking about, the kind of that sticky wicket that we get Jake through to get a number of units. So it's somewhat unfortunate that the paradigm that we have to look through at this trust is the affordable only. I would like to get to yes on this project 1000%. I do think we have to take everything like you just mentioned into account and have some further discussion. Charlie, you had your hand up?
Yes, sir. Just, I think the comments on mortgages and so forth raise an opportunity for a discussion on the trust has, consistent with sound investment and return principles, has the authority to invest money without necessarily the investment being tied to affordability per se or to affordable units. I recognize in even saying this that we would want to take a real hard look at it and get some advice. But it seems to me that from an investment perspective, the town could play the role as a mortgagee on some of these, borrow the money at low cost and put it out on the street to encourage. We could become a banker and at the trust level. Theoretically, I'm worried. Sure want to vet this thoroughly and have some help in looking at it. It may be a fool's errand, but I don't think it is. I don't think there's that type of limitation in place that would prohibit us from making sound investments at money that we're borrowing at low interest rate and arbitraging it or leveraging it. If we can get another % over it, maybe it's a good investment for now and wait to see what the market produces 5 years from now in terms of interest rates. And if they go down, have a trigger for refinance or something to get us out of it. But I'm getting way down into that rabbit hole, but I just want to throw that out. I really think that if we some combination of buying units, albeit this is presumably all rental, you'd have to condo the buildings in some way and retain ownership. We'd have to sort through this, but in order for us to get title on the building or the units rather, and conceivably do we hire you as the builder or something? There's a number of out of the box options that we ought to think about very actively and fast track it, because there might be some answers here that would be helpful and worth considering.
Thanks, Charlie. Wendy?
So I guess my business DNA overrides the speed of government patience, but we have money in the economic development pot, and I think we have money in the non-CPC funding pot. And what if we used some of that and then looked at staying within I mean, I understand what Laura's saying, and I don't disagree, Laura, but it's like the market has done this to us, not the developer, not us. We are, we're squeezed with the fact of what interest rates are and the value of our real estate. So I just think we've got to be creative, and time is money. The longer we sit on this, and I don't see a lot in the pipeline. So I'm wondering, maybe it's a question from Mark Milne, can we go to that economic development part? Clearly a nexus between economic development, workforce, and housing. Can we go to the affordable housing line in our budget and take the rest of it from the CPC fund portion?
So Laura, I see your hand. Let me go to Mark first just to answer that. I'm pretty sure that the non-CPC portion of our budget is very limited at this point. Am I correct, Mark?
Yes, there's not much left that's uncommitted. It's about $80,000, and we use that for some of our administrative expenses.
Laura?
Again, trying to think outside the box. What if rather than a $250,000 per unit subsidy to the project, we did a maybe $600,000, $500,000 down payment to the project with a 1% interest rate, 2% interest rate as an investment. Just a thought.
I appreciate the thinking, certainly.
Would that be prepaid?
Charlie, please.
I'm sorry. Forgive me.
Follow.
Thank you, Andy. I just want to throw something out here because Jake, what I think I'm hearing is that the challenges of renting to restricted units is a cost to a property owner, and either whether it's because of the long vacancy times or the cost on the front end to run the lotteries, and because it looks like I don't have your numbers in front of me, but from what I'm hearing, your market rates aren't that far off 100% AMI.
Correct. My goal is to build these units as, workforce housing. That is really what we're building. So yeah, you could argue that the whole project is almost affordable.
Right, but my guess is that the cost to you is putting restrictions on more than 2 units, and that's why, because I mean, it would seem like you could move to a 65-80 and 2 100s or 2 80s, 100, you know, there's could be some way to then justify maybe 125,000 per unit, but then you run it up against your H-dip. But it sounds like the H-dip, if you really want to hit the ground running this fall, is not going to be an option you're going to pursue.
Yeah, we would hit the tie.
Right.
And then I think it can be argued too that, you know, to have too many affordable units is almost, again, I know you're looking through a tight periscope here, but is almost a disservice to the needs of our community right now, because there's these what I call them sort of missing middle people who really, they're not qualifying for an affordable unit, or they're not able to get into those different programs. But they're, you know, if I can rent a 2-bedroom apartment at $2,350, they're, you know, lined up all day long.
Right. Well, but
so
you know,
it's sort of-
unfortunately, we're not seeing the market rates coming in at workforce rents. We're seeing the 850s coming in at $2,000 and $3,000 a month. So, you know, we're putting this money forward to, you know, to justify the affordables that we're funding. And then we're looking to the community and saying, yeah, now the rest of it's workforce. And it doesn't look workforce for a lot of folks around here. And I'm not saying you would do anything different, you know, that you wouldn't come in at those market rates, but if the trust could have some assurance that you've really got some 100% in there, you know, there's going to be people who qualify for that. So, I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. If you want to get this project moving, you know, without having to change policy at the trust level and all that kind of fun stuff, maybe that's something to think about.
Yeah, Paul, I think that's a fantastic point, and I know I've had this discussion with Jillian and others about how this SHI, it's almost a tail wagging the dog at times, chasing that. But if we're restricted to spending it on only deed restrict, I guess that's where I get twisted. Do we really have the latitude to do what, you know, on the front page of the paper makes sense? Hey, if these are really going to be that low of a market rate, we should try to support that. But are we allowed to? Like, you know, are there rules in place that preclude us? And at the end of the day, we truly are only buying 1 unit with these funds.
What else is in the pipeline?
If I can speak to that, there is one application pending from Bread and Roses, 2 units. But that's all I've, and you have the ARC housing assistance ARC application that is coming back next meeting.
Right, and I believe that was a significant ask, correct?
That's 500,000 as well. And Bread and Roses, from what I understand, is a pre-development at only 50,000, so not as significant.
All right, well, I'd certainly, like Wendy, I would like to get to yes on this if possible. I don't think that it's ready for a vote, obviously, today. I think this robust discussion is fantastic, and we all should put on our thinking caps and come back together. I understand that the time constraints and you want to get this as soon as possible, Jake, but I think that it would, I guess I would welcome discussion from other trust members. If is this something you want to move to a vote today, or take some time to consider and come back at our next meeting?
Well, I've already told you how I feel about it. If we're not going to vote on something today, I would suggest that we set a date for another meeting pretty quickly.
Okay. Laura?
But I would push for a vote. I mean, the perfect project's never going to come down the pike. And these arbitrary guidelines that we put in place for ourselves are guidelines we put in place for ourselves. And we have to look at what's happening in the real world. And it's moving faster than we can.
Thank you for that. Laura?
I'm not ready to vote in
Okay.
favor of this.
Mark?
Yeah, I would like to think more about this one and have a schedule a meeting quickly to follow this up.
Okay. Can we perhaps entertain a meeting? It's very interesting, since we've gone off our bi-weekly meetings, I feel like now we are finding ourselves scheduling meetings between meetings, which is a good thing if we have applicants coming in. So I would certainly entertain a meeting prior to our next scheduled meeting in September. Let's have that discussion at the end of the meeting when we talk about the next meeting date. With that, do we have any other questions directly for Jake while he's here?
Just
Charlie?
a quick open meeting law issue. We're limited, of course, in our ability to meet because of limited numbers on the board, but I'd be more than willing to work with Julian and Jake and maybe getting some input from one or two board members independently. Probably Laura and Mark might be the most obvious, and just figure what the parameters are and what the questions are on different approaches to this, from purchase to mortgaging to prepaying rent, if that was Laura's suggestion. Let's think outside the box and see what we might be able to do.
Yeah, Charlie, I'm comfortable with you having those discussions, but I think clearly we have folks that would want to bring this to a vote. So I would suggest at the end of this meeting, we'll schedule a meeting in short order. And if other solutions are brought forward, then so be it. And if not, we would bring it forward as the ask that it is now, which is a $500,000 ask. Does that make sense to everyone? Any other questions for Jake? Jake, thank you so much.
Thank
As
you, guys.
always,
I
we
appreciate the
appreciate it.
discussion and consideration.
Yep, we appreciate all you do. Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll go back to Jillian. Please continue with your trust administrator's update.
So let's see, the next item was, as we were discussing the balances internally, just a thought about requesting additional CPA funds to bolster a buy down program. Elizabeth and I had a brief discussion about that. It's basically, it would be an application to the CPA for additional funding. And something to think about. I don't know if anybody had any thoughts today, or just wanted to raise that as a possibility.
Laura?
A buy down program, as in buying down the cost of a house to an affordable rate? Is that what you're talking
Well, it looks as though just historically, 2017, there were some funds that were set aside specifically for maintaining those units that were coming up for resale. So you have units that are on the shy that are coming up for resale, but there's an affordability gap. So the maximum resale formula, or the discount rate formula that produces a maximum resale price, is out of reach for the folks that are actually income eligible. And we have a request currently. These are non-trust funds. They're under the control of the town manager. But the thought would be that if you really wanted to delve into it as a program, it might make sense for that to be a program that the trust oversees and manages.
Well, it's always been, it's been taken care of. Obviously since 2017, we've only had a small number of them come forward. So I don't think it's really, we can, set aside funds for it. We certainly have enough funds. We could set aside some funds for it. We use like $75,000 a house or something. So that could be a agenda item moving forward, but it's not a program that is promoted because it's whenever a resale comes up. Which is not.
Yes, that's correct. And I guess that there really isn't, there isn't enough funding to do like a full round of applications or NOFA for people to come forward that are non-deed restricted units. So your pool that you've been working with has been those units that are currently on the subsidized housing that are coming up for resale. So the alternative that some people do with and as you know, with a buy down program would be a person who looks for a unit in the marketplace and brings forward to pay a supplement. It's a little bit, that would be a different type of a program. If you-
Right, and that's what my question was, whether, if we're talking about what we've been doing in the past, replenishing that fund makes sense, but I think it needs to be on an agenda item. Can't.
Okay, Jillian, can you put that on our next meeting's agenda? And
Certainly.
I would like to have some sort of proposed amount that we would be requesting.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's very helpful. It helps
right.
me to know what we're asking. And then I just included in the packet, people had, I had raised the question as to whether people were interested in what Provincetown was doing with their year-round housing trust fund. So I had just included that in the packet as reference material. That is, it's a different direction, obviously, but I also, relative to that, other entities and other towns seek to have a kind of a continuous revenue stream. And that, when I'm hearing sort of what Charlie was talking about with maybe a revolving loan fund or something, that there might be other options that the trust could think about. So I just throw those out there as more things to talk about. And honestly, it's a little bit difficult because today we had a very good, robust discussion amongst board members, but it is sometimes difficult with the agenda, you know, looking at just an application. Sometimes we don't get quite as much intensive discussion or thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having a discussion on programs such as that would be good for an agenda in the future when we don't have a application that is clearly going to dominate the discussion of the day. Great. Anything else from you, Jillian, this morning?
That's all I had. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you so much. We'll move along. Planning and development update, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Just my rundown on general housing updates. We did issue that RFP for the property at 164 Route 149 in Marston's Mills, House on the Hill. And we had a site visit out on the property yesterday. So we have questions due on that in September. It looks like it's going very well. A note that we got updated numbers for subsidized housing inventory from EOLEC with the increase in households to 21,915. Our percentage of units on the subsidized housing inventory for the town of Barnstable dropped to 6.78% from 7.2. So that'll be a good starting point for us from an administrative perspective to start cleaning up our SHI. We have some properties that should be on there that aren't, and some that are on there that probably shouldn't be. So that's the next step for our office. Also a note, I think since the last trust meeting, we posted updated 2023 income and rents. Good to see a more modest increase over the last year. I think they went up about 7%. And again, we'll use both of those documents to update and publish at least our housing needs assessment. So we have that information out to the public. As Wendy mentioned, we had planning and development staff participated in 2 days of a great One Cape Summit, including a presentation that I did with Tim Love and commission staff on context sensitive housing design, and we still continue to see great production coming in as a result of the new zoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Any questions for Elizabeth? All right, moving right along. Topics for future meetings / agenda. I feel like we've already covered that a bit. Are there any other topics that anyone wishes to add? Laura, please.
I think that I'd like to have a bit of a postmortem on the 850 lottery debacle, and to kind of move forward to make sure that it doesn't happen again. So you know, what procedures or guardrails are we going to put in place so that that doesn't happen again? So
Jillian, please add that to the next agenda. What I'm going to propose is that we have a.
You have a Samsung Galaxy A0.
We would add that and the other topics to the September agenda that's already scheduled, And then we pick a date for a meeting sooner to discuss the proposal that came in today. Any other topics for that September meeting? Okay,
Just
seeing
for
none.
clarification for, through the chair, so is that something everybody's comfortable with me talking, and Laura maybe more directly about that process and then coming back with sort of a report or an update? Or is that, did you want to do it in a?
I'm completely comfortable with that approach. And then we could have a sort of an overview report and have a discussion amongst all of us at the September meeting. Is anyone opposed to that approach?
Well, more importantly, was Laura, was that your thought of how to do that? Or would you prefer that be an open meeting?
I want to be able to discuss it at the meeting. I don't want just a report that it just gets announced and set on. I want a discussion and a discussion with solutions. I don't want, and you know.
Okay.
Very good, thank you.
Laura, are you comfortable with Jillian discussing offline with you what your vision for that is? And if it's able to
Sure.
be produced by the first meeting in September, we'll do it. And if not, we'll take the time to get it put together and have it on a future agenda.
Sure.
All right, excellent. Any other topics for the September meeting? Okay, back to the what I would consider a matter not reasonably anticipated by the chair based on the application and robust discussion today. I'd like to propose a meeting later this month. If we could look at our calendars and try to come up with a date that may work for all of us. I would offer that perhaps a date that's not a Friday may be helpful to get a quorum. Are there any days of the week that work particularly well or not well for Wendy and Laura?
I can't do Tuesday.
Okay. Wendy, you're muted.
It just depends.
Could you possibly look at the week around the 22nd on your calendar? 22nd, 23rd, I'm sorry, 22nd is a Tuesday. That was perfect. The 23rd or 24th.
Morning of the 23rd works for me. 24th before noon works for me also, or later in the afternoon.
Wendy?
Or I could do the 24th before 1 o'clock.
Oh, the 22.
Okay, Thursday morning of the 24th. Does that work for all? Tentatively now? Okay, let's book it. 9 o'clock, Zoom. All right, let's make it so. It looks clear on Mark's calendar as of now. So hopefully that'll be a go. All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Are there any other topics that we did not anticipate that we need to cover today? I appreciate all your time. I know it went a little longer than typical. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
All right, roll call vote. Mark Milne,
yes.
Laura Schufelt,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Andy, yes. Thanks, everyone. Have a fantastic weekend.